All right, let's get started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the first installment of the Fall Broadside Reading Series curated by Joey De Jesus. This program is being recorded and live streamed on Facebook, so feel free to share that link afterward. We just ask that all participants have their cameras and microphones off. My name is Devin Munibo, and I am the marketing manager here with Center for Book Arts. And for nearly 50 years, the Center has been committed to promoting active and accessible explorations of the book as an art object. Today, we serve as an international hub for research, practice, education, collaboration, and exhibition, showcasing the multitude of forms and processes that the book can take, with an emphasis on cultural equity, expansive dialogue, and economic access for all makers. Be sure to check out centerforbookarts.org and join our mailing list for more information on upcoming in-person exhibition tours, online artist talks, literary events, and workshops. We are so very thrilled to kick off our annual Fall Broadside Reading Series, which features 6 writers from various backgrounds and writing disciplines collaborating with the Center's artists in residence to create a collection of limited edition letterpress printed broadsides. The collaboration explores the relationship of text, image, and design, incorporating the artist's visual conveyance of writers' poetry and prose. The Center will host a series of online readings featuring these works throughout the season, curated and moderated by Joey De Jesus, a poet, performer, and activist. They are the author of Hoax, Knocked the Threshold of Madness, and co-author alongside Shade Lene of Writing Voice into the Archive Volume 1, edited by Jennifer Tamayo, with support from UC Berkeley's Center for Race and Gender. Joey received the 2019-2020 Brick Art FP Project Room Commission and 2017 NIFA NISCA Fellowship in Poetry, and poems have appeared in the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, Artist Space, Brooklyn Rail, Brooklyn Magazine, the New Museum, and elsewhere. They've performed in Art Omi, Basilica Soundscape, the New Yorican, the Poetry Project, and many others. This evening's reading features poems and conversation with the incredible writers Sean D. Henry Smith and Ximena Lucero, and statements and designs by Broadside artists Myung Jin and Lisania Cruz. I'll let you all take it from here. Thanks.
Thank you, Devin. I'm really honored and excited and thrilled to curate the Fall Broadside Reading Series, which will feature Leila Ortiz and Zephyr Lisowski, and then in 2 weeks, and then Marie Hinson and Serta Morgan in 4 weeks. But tonight, we are joined by Sean D. Henry Smith and Jimena Lucero. I'm going to launch into their bios first, but before I do that, I just, in bringing this reading series together, I thought about poets whose work touches me and inspires me. And we're gonna start with Jimena. So I just wanted to say, like, Jimena's a neighbor. Jimena's a resident of the 38th Assembly District, where I ran for state assembly. Jimena fought alongside me to see me win this election. And I'm so immensely grateful for all the work that she did on behalf of the campaign, on behalf of our shared vision for livable present. So it's I'm extremely honored to be able to facilitate tonight's event and to introduce her. Ximena Luto is a poet and a sister. She was the 2019 and 2020 Emerge Surface B Fellow at the Poetry Project. Ximena hosted Mouth to Mouth, an open mic centering QT BIPOC voices with Kate Ulande Barrett. Her writing appears in The Recluse, Night Boats, Echo, Eel, colorblock.org, and many other venues. So yeah, we're here in Lenape, Canarsie land, and I am so thrilled to hear Ximena read. Take it away.
Thank you, Joey. Thank you to the Center um, for book. For book arts. Thank you so much for having me. And I will begin with a poem. Okay. I was preparing my body. I was preparing my body to face a world of collision the summer before I started hormones. There was an article about a trans woman who was attacked a block away from my home with a hammer circulating online. My hair grew. I roundly rubbed my tender breasts. I tried to look the other way, dreaming for all the beauty. I danced without worry, and around me, petals and petals of finally. My facial features sunk back into my skin like arrows. There was no beyond in my becoming. She might have screamed, but I was a girl so closely distant. Violence had not formed on my brown skin. At night, I turned on the news to face the world without my glitter goggles. The music slammed mute. My spine set signals that numbed integral limbs. I kissed the floor all bruised. Now I run without looking back. I'm very excited to be here. This next poem is titled Ordinary, which was chosen for the Broadside by Lisania Cruz. And it was such an incredible collaboration, and I'm very thankful. This is Ordinary. What is at stake in the end, if not the life of a woman? I hate this violent day. My dense smile crawls into the corners of unsuspecting inspectors. The mirror is a silver danger turned dagger. Black hair swirls around my neck and it intervenes with my motion. I race hours and minutes. I lose. My body is not my genitalia, but who cares about what I think? He honks at me from his car. He is a sperm ghost. I do not notice when desire becomes rage. A very fine line. Patriarchal fantasies of power kill. When I was growing up, there was this documentary that came out. I think it was a 2020 documentary of Barbara Walters interviewing trans youth. And this is a poem titled Barbara Walters Knew I Was Trans. Barbara Walters knew I was trans. I was alone in my parents' bedroom. Their bed was queen-sized with snow white sheets. The carpet was dirty with particles of paper and food crumbs. The bulky black television showed Barbara Walters interviewing boys, girls. Minutes into the documentary, I found out that they weren't girls, boys like my brother and my sister. Instead, they were like me. When they were told to behave a certain gender, they cried doves from their eyes. One mother recalled her child saying, "Mom, I'm so mad at God because there was something different about her body." All of my soft spoken prayers flew by my lips. I lowered the TV's volume with fear that someone would listen. My mother was in the kitchen cooking the orange rice I loved so much. She didn't understand English, but the body translates much of what is unsaid. Barbara Walters was captivating, a detective that wanted to know why these kids claimed to be girls' boys when they had been born boys' girls. She called them transgender, and I saw myself on television being scrutinized by a professional woman. Miss Walters walked into my room, asked me questions without lisp of hers. Unlike those kids, I didn't have freedom to be myself despite the danger that was narrated by Walter's small lips. The words were cautionary: surgeries, medicine, therapists, and death. I heard my mother's steps. The door opened and damp light gleamed over my body. I changed the channel, and the smell of her rice made me hungry again. I followed my mother into the kitchen barefoot. I sat at the table and played with my food. My family never noticed how I fell into myself, how my identity was forming through words. I thought of my response to Barbara's question about being a girl in secret. I'd say, still a kind of power. Okay, so this is in times of violence, in parentheses, by the state. Within 3 years, our walls had been turquoise and green and navy blue and mango yellow. All the walls replaced because broken. Once my back by the living room, once his fist, once when we played and pushed each other around, laughed so unbelievably hard. Once during Christmas, after he drank wine and Hennessy, and the tree ended up on the ground, lights and ornaments. I slept through the yelling, our nerves harmed, undone. We called the police many times. They came to know us by our grieving faces. Never did anything but incarcerate him. Time and time they showed up. What harm we caused to ourselves, oblivious to the certain truth that the state never intended to care for us. All right, I'm gonna read a few more poems. This is Silver Femme, which I'm very excited about because a friend and I collaborated on a film, and I think this might be the first time that I'm sharing this, but it might be coming out sometime soon. This is Silver Femme. We were at your house drinking a 40 ounce. Had been a while since I drank alcohol, but your presence was worth the celebration. You looked as beautiful as you do, tall and pensive with your light brown hair. I pictured my brown crooked fingers dancing in swirls around your head, digging a hole, reaching the skull. You made me feel divine, like the glazed ceramic angels my mother hangs in her home's hallway to keep bad spirits away. The room was warm and red. I laid on your bed attempting to look sexy. You handed me your drink after your mouth was bonded to it for a minute or so. Gazing across, I gulped the alcohol, gulping you. I was glad. You treated me neither like a boy, like a girl. You never used a pronoun when talking about me. I was a middle, a fume, a possibility. That night, you asked me about my gender, what it meant to me, how I pictured it. You said you wanted to learn more, be a darling confidant. A light in my chest pulsated like the massive moon behind your curtains. I hypothesized my gender far removed from our physical circumstances. The moon is trans. She shines like a silver femme, I said, flipping through her phases. I imagined my body to belong where it wasn't harmed. You squint your eyes and I curled into myself. My astronomical concerns puzzled you, but you took me as I was, a shape-shifting soul that has a home in altering latitudes. Our friendship was reliant on futurity then. When I'd see you again, my body, still mine, would be all of the unsaid things that night, a blip in time. Okay, so the next poem I'm reading is in sections. And I think one of the things I'm really interested in exploring right now in my poetry, or something that I'm noticing is a pattern in my work right now is just I guess violence, whether it's gendered violence or domestic violence. That's something that I find myself exploring. So right now, this poem is just titled like Violence 1, Violence 2, Violence 3. So this is Violence 1. The walls in our childhood apartment bloomed holes, often through the release of anger from my bony older brother. We were so different. I can't make up a time where this wasn't the truth. I used to cover the holes with portraits of my favorite musicians. In the hallway, there was a picture of Lady Gaga, and the hole in my bedroom door was covered with a photo of Selena. Covering the traces of our familial violence became habitual. We put up a big play. The broken had sound, and my face became a mask, girl with deep eyes. When I looked at these images, there was hope. I could not confess these things to anyone because of guilt or fear of collapse. Women like me often keep so much in secret and then we are erased. Violence too. Men. I don't dare tame. The one man I loved with my blood couldn't love me without swallowing the light of day. He was red with trauma, like an ugly abstract painting you can't forget. In the scheme of art, this served me no purpose. I created in gaps of silence, in spaces so small, my back gave in, my fingers wiped my tears, my mouth remained shut for minutes or centuries. There is no difference. I thought it was my fault there wasn't enough light for both of us to heal. The cold between us grew like an absorbing winter. Some relationships are formed to become a total ruin and leave a scar that pulses to occasionally remind the heart that it is there. Violence 3. I stayed at Yuna's for 2 months, not unsure of where I'd end up. The few things I owned were friendships and shoplifted books. I was becoming more disabled and doctors didn't believe me. Why should they care about a trans woman? I thought of dying maybe like once and then rarely ever again. I called my mother to tell her how I was doing, always blurring the line between truth and poetry. I turned to sex for money, but I only did it once because my weak body couldn't hold the desires men imagined onto me. I had sex with a man whose name I never asked, and he said, all trans women should be small like you. It's as if he said, if I were to crush you, your voice would not be loud enough. All right. I'll finish with one poem. Thank you so much for having me. This is Flying Closer. The one thing I decided for myself was the name I would be called. There was a fire in my head, so I called it Ximena. A name could heal everything before this. I did not know existence until I knew to define myself. There were others who attempted to erase my womanhood, and so I thought, what if I started from a little beginning? What is a name a Mexican mother would be proud of? My mother never wanted a daughter. When my sister was born, she said she was afraid for her, that the world is cruel to women. And when I told her I was never her son, but the dirty mirror in her imagination, she feared that I would die as I changed. Now she calls me a dangerous girl. Now she calls me a loca. When I was rebellious, I went into her phone and changed X to Ximena, put a white dove emoji next to my name as to remind her I am peaceful and that I renamed myself to fly closer, closer to what we have always been, women. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimena. It's always such a privilege to hear your work. Jimena's Broadside for Ordinary has been designed by Lisania Cruz, who has provided the following statement, and I will share my screen so everyone can see the design. Lisania says, we all play a role, conscious or unconsciously, in upholding patriarchy as the norm. For this broadside poster, I wanted to emphasize and use the power and courage in Jimena's words to engage people in understanding this for themselves. Therefore, I use the design of the poster to invite readers to be participants. With the sharp pencil, connect the rhythm, the dots, and the words until patriarchy is killed, to kill patriarchy as it lives in them. The poster has an actual pencil that people can use while reading the poem. Thank you to Ximena for sharing your practice for this project. And the poster size is 10 by 15. Paper is French paper, pure white construction, and it is available on our website, or obviously through Eventbrite, you could purchase one with your registration for this event tonight. And with that, thank you, Lisania. Thank you, Ximena, and we will move right along.
Okay, thank you, Devin. And thank you, Ximena. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous work. So I'm going to introduce Sean. And Sean, I pulled from your website. I pulled from your website, and something that I love is, I'm just gonna read it. I'm just gonna read it. Sean, Sian, Swan. Sean D. Henry Smith is an artist. Sean D. Henry Smith is an artist and writer working primarily in poetry, photography, and performance, engaging Black experimentalisms and collaborative practices. Sean received their BA in studio art from Hamilton College and have been awarded fellowships, grants, and residencies from Denniston Hill, Lotos Foundation, and Antenna Paper Machine. Sean's work and photographs have appeared in Apogee. Woo! I'm a co-editor at Apogee. Fact, The Felt, the New York Times, Triple Canopy, and elsewhere. Sean collaborates with Imani Elizabeth Jackson, an amazing poet, as Mouthfeel. Their forthcoming book, Consider the Tongue, explores histories of aquatic labor and Black food through poetry, performance, and ephemeral practices. Although isn't that book out?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, maybe I
Yeah.
need to update my bio. Yeah, it's very out. It's like, you can buy it.
And so yeah, the Consider the Tongue is out and explores histories of aquatic labor and Black food through poetry, performance, and ephemeral practice. Author of 2 chapbooks, Wild Peach, Sean's first full-length collection of poems and photographs, is coming out with Future Poem Press, which is just an amazing accomplishment. So without further ado, Sean, please take it away. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, when you invited me, I was just like, yeah, of course. Like, yes, I'll do anything with you. And Ximena, it's always so fantastic to share space with you, and truly so moved by your work always. And yeah, really happy to be in dialogue with you tonight. I'm just setting a little timer for myself. Yeah, I generally don't introduce each poem. Like, I will just say now I'll be reading a mix of new things and old things from a few of the projects that Joey's mentioned, and then things that I've just been meditating on. I'm starting off with 2 poems that have just kind of come to me in fever dreams, and I'm uncertain what they are yet, but they're called Remedies, which Laura is here, I think, but she helped me title those poems, and yes, there we go, yay. So yeah, Remedies 1. What can I know of this life but what it cost me? Pretending to love these patterns of negotiation, pretending the double world was acceptable. The skin beneath the skin made hell of our hell. The source from which the source draws rectifies its embellishment, reifies its abandon. Another way. In a room filled with overturned bottles, the ceiling fan turns, knowing not the relief it provides, but damns with its clicking. We lie awake at night, wondering would it be better to sweat out our sheets, turn the thing off. We remember the stillness as we enact it, hoping to quiet our body as to cool it. And briefly, I recall how slowly Granny eat. I see her in her dining room chair. Remedies 2. At the point in which I had finally found the courage to sleep, 3 on either side of the clock, beauty waits for no one, and my intention is to catch up with it. The absolute worst thing to fixate on as extended metaphor regarding displacement and morality steps onto center stage, a shadow seen before figure. The grooming practices of daddy longlegs, foot in mouth, one at a time, drives me up the wall into my own twisted nesting corner. You can have the whole bed. Sheets too, honey. Daddy, daddy long legs crawling across my bed again, 33 minutes after 3 on either side of the clock, on either side of the clock. The speaker of this poem is in a tizzy, in a huffy and a half. She's feeling down on her luck. How disparate, how desperate. I love her. I would do anything for her survival. I am her. I would do anything for her survival. It isn't trick or form. The reiteration is for resonance, affirmation. Repetition is for learning, comprehension. You'll sing the hook for years. You'll come to love the uncontainable earworm. Last Thursday, over drinks at the bar above the theater at the end of all that was familiar yesterday, she questions the fallings of little kings, nudging the black leather piece into its lanky isosceles slot, safe with its own for now. Communal forms don't negate the need for nor the sacredness of secrecy. A long game for real. You get out what you put in, and the rest is chance, it seems. What is left? What has not yet been done? We make our earthly return with cosmic determination, futile resistance. We operate under honest direction and earnest scarcity. Live the short life with your hearth on your sleeve, ear to the ground. Further still, she anticipated the chaos. Apparently, they all did. Some even knew as children. I break into hive and tremor as my spine remembers the frigid Pacific and how no one believed me. Of course it is devastating, and I won't hold back in telling you how. When it's raining out, and again power begets power, the state is unabashedly delighted in its carnage. Yes, the years spent unable to beg, plead. Eye of ice, heart of stone, yes, you ought to take it personally. Growing pains well into old age. Her frustration becomes me. I carry it with me even now. Why are we back here? We ponder together daringly, letting resentment sharpen around us as the porcupine teaches. My body is my defense in face of imminent enclosure. Its talents remain unburied. Sonorous and bitter utterances, performative dilly-dally. Perhaps we're back to take a bow, detail the determining factors. This weather in which blood bursts from my fingers, sludges in my toes. Cruel moon hangs high, and the dice again rolls. The garden at the underground. Drenched in purple and possibility, lil edges all laid. Horseback bandits, naked and illuminate, share a spirit with Miss Lawson after orange serenades. Are you surreal? Dancing with the woods on your birthday, that fucked up Gobert motherfucker is just as complicit. The widow, forlorn, the hood hang, citizens of the world. We are all undeserving of Nina Simone, but white people especially so. Are you here for fashion or for poetry, or the pity part all the same, mills and silhouettes? That sage you're smelling, I swear. The cat's missing larynx from that fight long ago. Are you surreal? Fuck around and get got, get goo. So gone. More piercings with your friends and portraits of your friends for your friends. Work with who you know, rewrite it all for your own sanity and victory. Pleasure creeping up now. You can't really plan for it, but make sure there's a seat ready. And all things are possible. Leap over the ocean and gesture with ecstasy. Ultimately, I want to change. And yeah, wow. I, um, when rehearsing earlier, this is a poem I've written a while ago, I guess, and it felt like it, like ultimately I want to change felt more like ultimately I want to be changed, and I'm trying to figure out what that like difference is. Yeah. Okay. I think it's like, yeah, it's putting the want into the universe and like out of my hands, which it needs to do happen. You know. Yeah. Sorry, I'm thinking aloud. Note on empathy to be continued. Keep Black liberation and Harriet Tubman out your mouth if you stole another nigga's paycheck. If you're spitting stupid for a byline. If your next post is an ad. I'm only rooting for who I'm rooting for. Becoming embodied empathy is trying to encounter another's gaze as intimately, as immediately, just shy of superseding your own. Swimming in it, hearing the language, always falling short, wanting to get caught up. Where falls your search for understanding? Where lies the heart to let it beat? All the dead and dying we live to protect, to honor, to humor should they need. In the face of a dark cloud, I recall with rigor, I must not die in a land that will not mourn me. To be continued. Unruly temporalities. This poem is also a song I worked on with Dream Crusher earlier this year. which you can hear on their album Another Country. Unruly temporalities, unruly narrator, I'm just looking to feel small in the right context. In the vast beauty of things, preferably, for all I know is wildness, wilderness, finds me when I'm not looking, beckons when I call, takes over at night, howls till high noon, unfurl into madness, an alias by any other name, alembic antagonist, auspice antinomy, afro-androgyny, we reek of it in good company. Everybody's hearing it, squealing barometer, kettle black block with misery midnight knowledges, darkness, smog, and flash, an earthen rumble inside the ravenous hive, the gospel of love and protest. Let me go off for a minute. The sounds of a world at its beginning, at its onto, transformation by any means. Get in there, stay in it. Narrative at the level of the line, move the air as it demands. Greeting feedback, grating amaranth, permeating frankincense, sliverlinger, smoke in the monolith, the bones of the song begin shaking. Latch on into grumbling welcome, sound bitten, bothering, bother, body gather, lift, pull, tear, pull, push, roll. Organic choreography, mean-spirited when I need to be, for the best of us. Queer seraphim, black-winged the night, vertiginous in the hard glow, flicker, fuck, shutter, blast, blinking in the blistering sun, stunned out of ennui. How lightning breeds thunder, light stems that know you, drain you, that summon the long ago. Glances, gazes, gauzes, goozing, shattered glass underfoot. What brings me to you is by definition rebellion together. Our breathing scream, asymmetric sonics, breathes back life into what breathes for us, bleeds us for. Nihilist longevity, all praise, daughters of resentment. Our sour tongues thirst for water, and we will not stop seeking our satisfaction until we are no longer thirsty. That would be out of character. Mouth faint aroma, link up in that other place, noisy interiority. There is nothing, and even there is life. Eyes on you and in you, hold and heed, onto inner oculus, into ornate orbitals, nonetheless nocturnal masses, notwithstanding now I know what I know. Hardcore set. Sorry, I'm timing myself still. This one's for Bossa Nova and Dime and the ageless Monday nights that kept me and all who joined. I could say more, but then I would have said everything. The mind-body divide remains a great challenge, though everyone has seemingly moved on. It isn't becoming or useful for anyone. I'm ashamed of all obligations to time and labor. Feet on ground, long-standing ceremony, worms in feeble dirt. The rising roots preamble as the tree becomes waters overswelling, relentless tide. It's impossible not to feel betrayed by you. This isn't where I thought we were headed. What a beautiful night, despite all that oppresses us. The range of things you have done for sugar, salt. Take me into the night hour, and I've gone footloose, and the fog machine hisses like a locomotive. They throw back their heads screaming, techno saved my life. It gave me my body back for a while. Wild Peach, and I'll probably read maybe one more after that. Or maybe two short ones. I'll read two short ones. Find ourselves in the afterskin of chat and tell, Wild Peach, I hear you and dream. Unbounding clarity, the reimagined and the forgotten, the unforgivable. Flaw struck, fire strike, no flags will remain. Crystal cut, light catch, the project is avoidant, vast, vagrant, and I run to and froth, fog mouth consuming the alternate moistures, the molds of my inquiry spreading spore, porous flower, pumice, the afterthought of charcoal, the city burning beneath forever. Run and tell, raise roses, a breath, a broth, wild peach, meat fruit, mouth bones take tender attack. My serpent-bellied soliloquy, I love it when you laugh big and your temple swells. Shadowless city, wing bring body to the brick source. Triangulation of dislocality. Rock steady, sour stream, sour juice. Hear the spaces between the outpour. Now it's just switched to. Sorry. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, this one is from Consider the Tongue. Bear witness. Gentle butcher knows, sound before sight. Tender click of clear bones will follow right to the dream state. That's when language is acquired. When there is no other tongue to explain, I have the skill to feed us now. The brackish water runs the belly, disperses the catch. When dogfish barks, bark back, such is custom. Dense run of slow metal glides like a blue riff. The microcontaminants haunt all I know. I'll heal you best I can. Caspia and cobia, cassia and chamomile, cobalt and creme. Press my ear to the shell, to the cutting board, to the shoreline, to your chest. I hear the running of raw water, rare breed. Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Center for Book Arts. Thank you, Joey. This is the last one. Thank you, Ximena. Thank you, everyone, for being here. May it remain unchartered chatter of late singing mockingbirds. It is daybreak no matter when awakened. How else to halt the haunting but to avoid the night? All but half the hall, 9 squared, hoarse with remembering. A mercurial inevitabilities bend what was anticipated, flout an already broken relativity. You speak tenderly amidst the swelling of air, spoke of leap years somberly, I dare not repeat the spell. Exponential, the volume of rosebush where you live, blushed forth in bloom second and third and fourth time round. Useless in your eagerness to learn all things in part, to part as you please. Burning all over, bruised fruit, baby, what a time we're in. Worn thin by the very ambition, darting through thorn-thrown twig metropolis. You take it all for granted, rusting nest empty, still mocking its very nature. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Sean.
Thank you.
I will now share your broadside. So this broadside has been designed by Myung Ji, and she has provided the following statement. After first reading through a handful of Sean's poems to choose which one to print, my mind was swimming with imagery to incorporate into a broadside. Mockingbirds, twigs, strawberries, snakes, chairs. Letting the ideas brew for a while, this little poem, Earworm, which I had initially overlooked, grew more and more insistent and into a real earworm in my head. It brought thoughts and feelings of disorientation and need. I wondered about the differences between sympathy and empathy, between knowing and understanding. I thought about the patterns of habit one builds, what gets embedded into a life, and how we might give voice, shape, and love to what we've absorbed. This broadside is a result of this meditation. The primary print of the poem is surrounded by a field of blind printed repetitions of text from the poem. I hope that the broadside draws the reader and viewer closer to the surface of the sheet. I hope that you'll want to touch it front and back and then need to hold it from arm's length again. I hope you'll struggle to read the inkless text, but read the poem over and over again and start to recognize the letter shapes and shadowed edges without even trying. Thank you to Sean for your poetry, and thank you to Center for Book Arts for the invitation and resources to create this broadside. And this broadside will, of course, be available on our website after the reading. And I will now turn it over to the poets and to Joey for a conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Wow, so stunning. So stunning. Before we open it up to questions from the audience, I wanted to ask Sean and Ximena to sort of think through some things that I've been thinking through. I prepared a few notes. I've noticed this year popularization or mainstreaming of the word abolition and its lexicon in response and in anticipation of the ongoing obliteration of Black life. And I was hoping to think about this together since we all identify as abolitionists and we're all together. And some lines from tonight's reading definitely stand out in my mind with regard to this. Ximena's oblivious to certain truths that the state never intended to care for us. Also, I imagine my body to belong where it wasn't harmed. And Sean's dressed impossibility, edges laid, which in my mind reminds me of this line in Vivi Francis's poem Creation Myth, in which she writes, there was a possibility which was itself an action. And then of course, that gorgeous concluding line, I must not die in a land that will not mourn me. As Ruth Wilson Gilmore explains, abolition is life in rehearsal. So we might think of it as a name for a set of imaginings in the call for complete and total eradication of systems, whether they are carceral or capitalist or imperial, militaristic, etc., that perpetuate collective harms. My question is, or what I'm hoping to sort of think through, in the call for abolition, we call for the end of policing and mass incarceration in these systems that create and exacerbate our demise. What tools does poetry provide us to uproot these systems? Is it that we are here together tonight? Is there something in the gesture of writing or sharing one's work with another such that they might produce a beautiful broadside? How might we think of the practice or our practices as poets and writers in imagining worlds in the aftermath of this one, which must come to an end? And how do we honor our abolitionist predecessors? So I was hoping maybe Ximena, if you had a few thoughts, and then we can just just think aloud, this is not a formal kind of thing. A lot of these ideas I haven't fleshed out, so I really appreciate any guidance.
That's such an incredible question. Thank you, Joey. And I think it's a question that there's just so many answers to. But I think, just my experience of writing, of how I think of abolition in my writing, I think it is by imagining what a world could look like where Black and brown trans people are safe, and that is not only safe from harm that happens under a patriarchal society, but also what safety looks like from the state, for us to be safe from violence that is done from the state. So I think that's something I try to think about when I'm I don't think I do it. I don't think I sit and sit down and say this is what I'm going to write about, but it's just one of those things that like you quoted that it's something you quoted Ruth Wilson Gilmore about it being something that you actively do. And I think it just it shows up in my poetry as just someone who knows that there is a better way to addressing harm than carceral methods or punitive methods. But I think, yeah, that's kind of what comes to mind right now.
Yeah, there's something like you kind of just, there's something to like naming when you say you like by honing in on state violence, right? There's something to even that, right? Like you're kind of, there's something so nebulous about it that it's that what I appreciated in your reading is that there's a naming of there's like a naming of that nebulosity. And I think in that way we as readers can prepare, you know, ourselves.
Yeah.
I think that there's also something about it's both the preparation and also maybe even putting name to something you might know, like it's, yeah, I think a lot about sort of like an interior experience or sort of like the kinds of things that, yeah, capitalism, patriarchy, imperialism normalize so deeply that you can't, like when you are experiencing the violences of them, you and no one seems to respond to it because it is so normalized. It drives you mad. And I think there's something about like getting close to the thing. It's like it, and it's I think maybe the thing that allows, or poetry being the microscope that allows that analysis. Yeah, because it's like you're trying to sift through all the layers of the thing and trying to really like experience it and name the experience of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm also, I do think there is, and I think Joey, you mentioned this, but I think there is something about, just the space that this kind of thing does generate, in which, like I've met you in the context of poetry, and your own political work has sort of like also become a part of our relating, you know what I mean? And because they're tethered, you know what I mean? Like it's um it is what happens on the page and it is what happens with the voice, but then it's also like how you like live it and how you live to protect others and how you are like fighting for the actual world that has that, like the world that isn't here yet, and the world that like we're it's like beyond dreaming at this point, but that we're fighting into existence, yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you. That's really helpful for me. I wanted to make sure we had time to open this to questions from the audience if they had any for the readers. Otherwise, I'm happy to continue this line of questions. So if you can use feel free to type your questions into the chat as they arise. Unless, if not, yeah, there's something about this moment too, right? Like, I'm curious about why it can't just be maybe, is it the pandemic? Like, is it this sort of like the compounding? Like, I just don't, why last year when we were out calling for the abolition of the police, or were we regarded as lunatics, and whereas is it really like this plague, like I just don't, I'm struggling to see that. I'm struggling to with this sort of like, all of a sudden everybody's like, oh my God, which is amazing, right? Like,
I'm not convinced that people don't think we're lunatics. You know what I mean? Like, because I think the dangerous thing is that reform and abolition have like somehow become the same word, and they're not. We know they're not. You know what I mean? Because they're like, reform is first of all impossible, and it's just it's the morphing of it's when the beast learns the language, and it's like, okay, we'll pretend to do the thing, and they don't. And reform is always happening. Abolition is also always happening, but it's not as celebrated. And so, and I think what the beast is doing now, and sorry if I'm being too abstract, but is just making those two words the same thing.
Yeah, I see that in the language of defund the police, right?
Right.
Where there was this like push for city council here in New York to which didn't happen. The police have not been defunded at all. But of course, our education system, like the state just stole millions of dollars wage theft from our public school educators, and the higher education is being kept aloft by volunteer labor, in the uni system.
And they're all firing them. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And they, everyone's losing their healthcare. It's like,
yeah.
Right, and it's like this, conflation or a collapse is of like the language, or an appropriation of the like lexicon of abolition, right? To water down the demands or something. Yeah, it's interesting to think the poet's responsibilities, or maybe that's not the right word, but the poet's task in this time at making sure, right, like, I don't know. Do you think of the moon, like Silver Femme, right? The moon is a silver femme, right? I think of that as a poem where the work is in the world. The poem is sort of worlding a new world, right? And is that not like, I hear that statement and think it's like this new world in the aftermath of this one, right? Or this proposition for a new world. This imagining of this sort of like creating of a foundation or a foundation, or this like sort of like cornerstone, right? Like, so yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, just hearing both of you, talk now. Also, like, why now? Why, what is the difference? I think that many communities are just becoming more aware of how the state fails us continuously, and that really we can't rely on police to address harm that happens in our communities. And I think, like a lot of my poems are very, I think Silver Femme, it might be different from my other poems because it does kind of imagine a new world. But the rest of my poems, I feel like, are just about like everyday forms of violence that happen in the home or happen in just like communities of color, whether it's addiction and how that's criminalized and uh, I think I know people that are abolitionists that just don't know that they're abolitionist, and they are abolitionists just because they're not. Uh, they understand that police um, uh, really aren't helpful in addressing violence, and instead create more violence. And I think that the shift is happening just because of our experiences with police, because of our neighbors' experiences with police. Um, that it just feels uh, so necessary to be an abolitionist, um, and I mean, it's definitely concerning when it is being used in the wrong context or being co-opted. Um, but I think people are coming into abolition because they need to survive um, from state sanctioned violence.
Right. Oh, there's a question that popped up. Thank you for this conversation. I'm curious about either of your journeys to uncovering, remembering the confidence to write and put your writing out there, because it is so potent and necessary, and thank you. Did it come early in your life? Was it drawn out of you? And or did you make a clear decision to commit yourself to this work, etc.? Anything you're willing to share on this front? Oh, thank you. That's such a marvelous question. Thank you, Stevie.
Shouldn't Ximena, do you want to start or should I start? I hmm. I and I guess when I was first writing this as a teen, most of it was actually sort of manifesting itself through music, and I think which like at the time I was just putting online, and then like people were responding to it, and then there was just like a community around it. I grew up in Miami, and then there's like a community around it, and so just in that way, I think just like having, yeah, being with people around like voice and sound has always been really important to me. But so far as I'm a poet in the way that I am now, um, um, it it's, I mean, what sometimes I'm a little bit woo about this, but I do think that like the role of poet is like an ancestral role, and like a really like, you know, it's one that is like, it's handed to you, and it's like it's what you take it or you don't. And I have kind of always, yeah, I like, whether or not Center for Book Arts is having me do this, I think I would be doing a version of this, um because it's like what I have to do, it's like how I like make sense of the world. um and yeah, like it's how I like fight for a new one. Hmm. Yeah. Sorry, I think that's.
For me, I kind of just, I like from an early age, I was just writing and journaling, I think, almost like just documenting what was happening in my life um, and I um, I don't know if I made like a clear conscious decision to, you know, dedicate myself to writing. But um, but I also agree with, you know, with what Sean said, that it does feel like it's something that um, um, is sometimes chosen for us, or it's ancestral, um, and it feels necessary to document um, what is happening in my circle. So yeah.
Questions are rolling in. So I'll read them and then you guys will answer them. How's that sound?
That sounds good to me.
Okay. I'm like, I want to feel like I'm doing something. Sean, could you talk a little bit about the relationship between photography and poetry? And I actually think I have like a few of your pieces behind me, so I would have
Oh
to
my God.
like show them.
Yeah.
The ways they both sort of work as a kind of documentary form and an image-based form. How did you come to them both? And maybe to sort of Ximena, for you, I think this you mentioned earlier that the
The
piece is
film.
right translating into film, and maybe if you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about that, the relationship there.
Yeah. That's actually so for me, I also find myself sort of um I took so I don't know, as a film studies minor, that matters, but I um um took intro to photography as a prerequisite um to video, and I just fell in love with the still, and that's kind of it. Like film has always been sort of an anchor for me, and in when I think about film and books, I think about how they hold space for like a multimodal practice, and you know, because you know, ink on paper activated by the voice is inherently several modes of production. You know, it's you know
Mm,
it's yeah, and it's printmaking, it's reading, it's performing. You know, so and then same with film, where it's sound, it's image, it's performance, it's you know, and they're all inherently collaborative practices. um I think maybe part of what why I like have like stuck with photography in particular is that it's a practice I can manage. Both of these practices are for me kind of literally, I can manage them. I can like um I can afford to do them, and that sort of thing. But I'm also just really interested in the way that um, uh, they fail each other. They because you know again it's getting as close to the bone as you can, and that's something that's so beyond that. Like it's like it's like documentary is impossible already to me. Like you know, in that like you know, so often the mode of documentary is an objective form, and like an objective form is impossible. Um, and so poetry and photography to me feel like a kind of pursuit of truth. Like it's like an impossible pursuit of truth, and like sometimes you land on something. Um, and that's like my like why they're tethered to me. And also just the ways that they allow like a study of light and life, and yeah.
wow, that's so nice to hear. Um, uh, well, in this film that I'm just very excited and nervous to share, I collaborated with my friend Nico Riano, uh, and Sujin Gonzalez and um, Katie Nishida. And it was just really just, friends coming together. For me, like this project, it was really just, I think something like film is very collaborative because it requires many people to come together and help with the process. So to me, it was like an extension of what like queer community is. Uh, and I think writing can just feel so isolating. I think I struggle with writing a lot. And sometimes I just have to say it. Like, I don't like to write. Um, like, and I feel guilty for saying that, but it's very hard. It's hard for me to be alone. Um, and so working on images connects me to a world that isn't just in my mind. Um, uh, so that's what's different, but I think at the core of film is writing. So like I guess I understand its importance, its responsibility, and so now I think I want to make more films, and um, so that's but the project that I just worked on, it was very collaborative, so it felt different in that way, that it wasn't a thing I did just on my own.
I see another question here about, oh, here, for younger writers, what is one thing you would tell your younger self? I love this question.
What would you tell your younger self?
What would I tell my younger self?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I don't know what you just said, Jimena, about not liking, right? Like your honesty about that, and like really resonates with me, because as a younger writer, I was not writing from a place of joy or happiness or comfort. For me, my relationship to writing emerged at a very young age, after losing my cousin and to cancer. And it was such a traumatizing experience. And my relationship to poetry, from really in my whole life, I've always felt that my relationship to poetry is so what Lauren, my cousin, sort of became after she died, because she it was like how it was a wisdom she imparted to me and taught me after she left. And so if she could teach me these things after she died, that means she's still here and still present, and in a way possesses my being. And so writing was always like this way of like staying honest and in touch with this part of me that was no longer here, and that part of me that was her. So I really appreciate that, that you said that about, because writing was painful and unresolved, and especially when I was a much younger writer. So, I mean, as I would, my advice would be to say, like, I know we're recording, but so like screw the fixation with regards to publication and all of the sort of model minority kind of ways of performing, like being a poet, that I felt like I was coming up in, like being told you have to publish in these venues that historically don't celebrate voices that come out of the margins. Of like literary visibility or of visibility, whatever. So yeah, my advice would be to, because like I did as a young writer, I those things, I was concerned with why am I not being published in Field, or Agni, or these venues that just didn't really, like, I would tell myself to think more expansively about what publication means, right? It's the making of the word public. And I felt like I felt convinced to run for office when I thought about that, like when I thought about other ways of making the word public. And then, the care that I would have to like put into the words that I want to make public through that that avenue, right? Like, so that's what I would tell myself, because if this were my second time running for office, I would have won.
So you'll just win next time, is the you
Right.
just have to win next time.
What about you guys?
And maybe even better, there won't be offices to run for. That's the right.
True. That's the truth.
Right.
Ximena, you next, because I actually still don't know.
Well, that honestly, I just feel like I feel like I'm in that place in writing where I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing at all. And like I am writing, but I am not concerned about publication really, or and I'm just trying to write what feels honest, and sometimes that takes a long time. And but I think also just one, I'm a disabled writer, and so my relationship to writing, it's very different, because it's like when I have the energy to write, through pain, so that really, I think I'm more focused on right now, as the world is coming into this newness. It feels more important to be present in community, and to be present in the relationships I have with people. And so writing it's so important to me, but I think it's like I haven't really been writing new poems during the pandemic, and it's been very hard for me to focus. It's been all of these things, just trying to survive under capitalism, and so I think just trying to be present in the relationships that I have with people, and seeing how writing comes into my life. I'm being more open to how writing comes into my life right now. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
It does, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think like I don't necessarily feel like I have like I don't know any, but like not necessarily like any regrets or any and that sort of thing. Yeah, and like Joey, a lot of what you said resonated with me as well. Like I definitely had a certain, I mean, even in just that it was like my limited knowledge of like what publication looked like. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, I guess like eventually you get a poem in the New Yorker or something. And once I like realized like, oh, actually I'd prefer to publish in Apogee. You know what I mean? Like I'd prefer to publish in a space that like the editors, you know, are in my community, and like are thinking in ways that I'm thinking alongside and that sort of thing. I think I like actually learned that really quickly, and just feeling really lucky that I like fell into a community that was supporting that, um, or like also holding that value dear. Um, um, I just there are like I wish there are things that or there's work I wish I'd encountered sooner that has been like really important to me, and that's, you know what I mean. And then like unfortunately, I wasn't in the spaces in which like, you know, for someone like I've been so in the world of Akila Oliver, and like I wish, you know, I've only really known her work over the last like 2 years. Sadly, it feels like I feel so sad about it because it's like, um sometimes I'm reading her and it's just like, oh, like I needed this 10 years ago. Like I needed this 10 years ago and I'm so happy to have it now. But like I needed it 10 years ago. And like, and I wish I had been able to hold space with her, you know, in whatever, like sitting in the back of an audience or something, you know what I mean? Like, um, it's that kind of thing that I feel like I have uh, like regret about or resentment about. And it's just kind of like, oh, like I wish I was in like better study or something. And I don't know if I'm to blame for that or, you know, every academic institution I've been in is to blame for that. But that like maybe I would just tell myself, my younger self, to just like read more, even if you were reading a lot. um, yeah.
Yeah, that's such a I just had that experience with W.E.B. Du Bois's The Comet. I was like, you know, I've read so much of his work and I didn't even, I was like, how did this miss me? And like, or how did I miss this? And like, yeah, thank you. That's such a marvelous answer to that question, I think. Because that's a, it feels like a weight.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think we're almost up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're out of time. I think we're out of time. So I just want to remind everyone that we're gonna be back again in 2 weeks with Layla Ortiz and Zephyr Lisowski on the 29th. So save the date, and yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Ximena. Thank you, Center for Book Arts, for having us and for hosting us. And, you know, squad roll through. We all cute. Yeah, so have a wonderful, have a wonderful rest of your evening. And I don't know what else to say, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you all for being here as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Devin.
Yeah. Good night.
Bye.